lovely to see you all. Welcome to Patricia Peat's webinar, The Immune Link, in which she looks at the long-term impact of diet and lifestyle on disease states. Most of you will not need me to introduce Patricia, but for those that do, she has spent the last 30 years helping people deal with cancer, from her oncology background and her indispensable guidance service, Cancer Options. Patricia has seen the development of integrative medicine flourish, and her integrative approach supports her clients both physically and emotionally, with profound results, not just for them, but also for those around them. The foundation of her programs holds for all chronic diseases, and her recommendations have empowered and helped countless people over the years. More recently, Patricia has launched the Peat Institute, where she offers training courses to practitioners in cancer and integrative oncology. Over to you, Patricia.
It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My slide has slightly moved on from the first one, but we shall gloss over that. This is a bit of a departure for me this evening, and it's been something I'm very pleased about. Been asked by the Really Healthy Company, which are a company I've known and admired for a very long time, to have a look at and talk about some of the things that we find common amongst different approaches to different kinds of illnesses, different kinds of chronic diseases. What are the common links that we find, and what are the strategies that we can put in place to help our clients deal with them, if anybody who's watching who's actually dealing with any of these things themselves. And it's been a very interesting one for me, because I have been so immersed in cancer, so very immersed in cancer for such a long time. And often, of course, you come across links in research, you come across lots of different things that you can link in, that's causing changes in the body, that's causing a lot of problems. And, the more that you look at these things, the more that you come to the conclusion that actually, there is no, these are not particularly separate diseases. These are just all manifestations of the same problems that's happening to our bodies, the same problems that's happening to adapting, the same problems that's happening in the environment that we're coming across all the time. And I think what's very common and is a particular aspect that I particularly found dealing with cancer when I worked in oncology, and I think people do find right across the board is that modern medicine. I don't mean traditional medicine. I think maybe years ago they did get to the bottom of things a bit more, but modern medicine really doesn't get to the bottom of, pardon me, what is wrong with people? Why has that disease state manifested itself? What can they do to help themselves? You look at most chronic diseases, and all of our healthcare approaches are very, very much sticking plasters. They're very much symptom management. It's interesting, I say that, but it's interesting to see just more recently that, weight management and lifestyle approaches are starting to come into more mainstream with GPs for things like diabetes. And, that's a very good thing indeed. But, we in order to address a lot of disease states, we need to look an awful lot broader in terms of what's happening. So, and we are seeing increases in both acute and chronic disease states right across the board. Increases in Alzheimer's, dementia are profound. Absolutely. I have recently experienced that with my mother-in-law, unfortunately. And it's incredible how common a problem that is. Just mentioning it to anybody, everybody's got a relative who's got Alzheimer's or dementia, and everyone's kind of dealing with this problem. Cancer, as we know, is massively on the increase. It's going to be incidence of one person into Parkinson's, diabetes, correspondingly arthritis, osteoarthritis, mental health issues, chronic cardiovascular problems, every single one of them, we are seeing increases in, and incidences often occurring a little younger in life as well. We're certainly seeing that at Cancer Options, unfortunately. The last year, the number of young people we've had with colon cancer has increased dramatically, and it's striking. It really is striking. And there's common problems within that, and a lot of the issues, when you start to look at them, as I'm sure comes from our environment and our ability to cope with it. There we go. Look, as we know, food production is mass food production is causing an enormous amount of problems for us. Pesticides, herbicides, for example, they've been massively implicated in Parkinson's disease, massively implicated in Alzheimer's and dementia. A lot of these chemicals, one of the great problems is the effect on the gut microbiome, which is the heart of most health problems when they start to manifest. And when you've got the actual food causing an enormous problem with that, then we have got issues. And some of the chemicals can promote obesity, insulin resistance. Again, effects that we're going to have a look at. They can have effect on the actual mitochondria and the cell respiration aspects of that. And this is not a problem that's going to get any better, unfortunately. Another issue, as many people know, of course, is things like dairy production, which has been a massive issue for so long now. The amount of chemicals and different things that get into the food chain that we find in there. It's estimated that a glass of milk can contain something like 20 different kinds of drugs, painkillers, antibiotics, growth hormones, some given to the cattle to make them produce really fast. Some occur because they get them lactating, and the poor cows are then milked to bits to get the best amount out of them. And some of it is coming in through the food chain, particularly through the water system. I remember when I was a young nurse, a very long time ago now, and I was late one evening. I was watching a program on television, and I was working with breast cancer at the time. And there was a program from Lincolnshire talking about the massive amount of chemicals going into milk and the massive amount of growth factors that were being generated within that. And I sat there that night and I thought, there's going to be a massive outcry about this. It's going to be, it's clearly a very serious issue. And then in my inexperienced youth, I didn't realise nothing was going to happen, and nothing did. An awareness of what's happening with that is something that has been manifestly ignored for a very long time. There is, you do see it in the papers that people are starting to look at the food, how we produce food, etc., and raise issues about it. But it's a bit of a monster that's going to be very difficult to get sorted out. And then the water supply, of course, which is one of my main bugbears, particularly when it comes to cancer. I think out of all things we ask people to do in terms of change and adapting and where to focus their time, efforts, and money on, I think the water supply is one of the most important. Varying amounts of things get put into water, but particularly in terms, everything that we give to cattle gets peed out into the ground, gets back into the food chain, gets back into the water chain. For many years, we've been, women have been HRT, the pill, everything's been going into the water system. The water filtration system, basically, it's just not fine enough to filter it out. And again, this is something that's come up time and again. And the water companies are saying, we know we don't, but, it's going to cost too much money. And there we are, kind of amongst the world leaders in terms of hormone-related cancers. And what we've seen evolved, I will keep referring to cancer because obviously that's my thing, but, what we've seen evolve certainly in cancer is where, originally you think hormone cancers, prostate, breast cancer, etc. We're now seeing so many types of cancers that are influenced by hormones. And whether that's something that we didn't know before, or indeed they've actually that change in mutation has taken place to allow them to be influenced by hormones is kind of difficult to say. But so many hormones. Haley, sorry, my fault. Very poor management here. I forgot to plug my computer in. Sorry. Whoops, daisy. Well, you get all your preparation right, and then you don't plug your computer in. Right. Okay. So there's an enormous amount of hormones in the water, and everything is not getting filtered out. I actually read a couple of years ago, there was some research done in London, and in London they wanted to know how many people were taking antidepressants, not how many people were getting a prescription or how many people were, cashing the prescription at the chemist. They want to know how many people were actually taking them. So they actually measured the amount of antidepressants in the water. There's such a cocktail there. That's exactly what you can do. So, the water system is massively at risk. And all the things that contribute to illness, of course, and are inducers of cancer and inducers of, any of the things that can potentially go wrong with us. Viruses I'm going to look at in a bit more detail in a minute. Bacteria, anything that, as you will know, any of the aberrant bacteria in the gut that can enter the body, and the gut microbiome can be very, very badly influenced. Inflammatory diseases, long-term inflammation, alcohol intake, aberrant genetic methylation, smoking, air pollution, which is again we know is something that's rife. I'm just fondly thinking about what London's going to be like when the majority of cars driving around it are electric, and it's quiet and the pollution is less. It's going to be a different city altogether. Poor nutrition, of course, obesity, parasites. A lot of influences by these things get completely ignored. So we're going to run through these in a bit more detail as we go through. So, and there's also the opportunity for questions and things at the end. We'll have a look at. So, to analyze with somebody, what is their risk factors, looking back at what's happened to them in their life. Do they have any history of viruses? Very topical at the moment, of course. We've all been living with this damn virus that's caused us so many problems. But a lot of people don't get rid of viruses once they have them. So we need to look into what's still there, infections, parasites, etc. Particularly through gut testing. I did a gut test with somebody the other day. Interestingly, she had a large amount of E. coli, and she says, "Oh, I had a really nasty E. coli infection about 2 years ago." And of course, she'd been treated with antibiotics. The immediate immediate effects of the infection had gone down. But the E. coli was still rife in the gut, still there, prevalent to come back. And E. coli turns into, it actually kind of melts into like a pathogen into the gut wall, and has a really nasty effect on that. So one of the first places I'd always look with anyone for any of the underlying problems is going to be in the gut. Any infections, parasites they might have had, all that needs to be investigated. Diet, low vegetable intake. People that just don't get anything like the amount of nutrients that they should. Over drinking alcohol, and I say tap water. Tap water is a very big one. sedentary lifestyle, after we just all had a year of being told to stay in our houses and not go anywhere and allowed out once a day. That's become even more prevalent. I think most of us have suffered from that, but generally lifestyle is more sedentary than it has been in the past, of course. Screen time, we're going to look at circadian rhythms and the amount of impact screen time has on our health. Having got a 15-year-old son who spent the most of the last year being educated via a screen, I've seen the effects of that combined with not, being able to mix with other people, the effects that has on the energy, on the general health of somebody. Family history is very important. We're going to look at genetics and the links within that, and the potential. You see an awful lot of familial tendencies within families for certain disease states. I think it's far more linked and common than people realise, and it does come down to detoxification capacities. There's not a lot that's enormously hereditary about most things, but hereditary being very, very prevalent, but familial certainly. We get you can see a great deal of links, and also pre-diabetes, hypoglycemia, signs of insulin resistance, sleep patterns. And has anybody had a gut infection in the past that's really been, and what is the history of antibiotic use? Those are really the most important things that we need to look at and establish. And what are the commonalities between these things? Well, one of the main commonalities and the most prevalent one, as far as I'm concerned, is the potential for inflammation to rise in the body. Inflammation is the precursor to most chronic states, and when we get inflammation, that has an effect on cells. It has an effect on the immune system. The immune system can be suppressed, but inflammation really suppresses the T cells of the immune system. Inflammation can also help to generate a high cholesterol and the glucose intolerance, and lead to poor detoxification capacity. So inflammation is at the heart of it. We've highlighted the curcumin, one of the main anti-inflammatories. I've got lots of different lists of compounds that potentially help, but of course, good quality curcumins, good quality, highly absorbed, is actually very, very important. But most of these chronic diseases have great big links with inflammation, cardiovascular, with the laying down of plaques. Arteriosclerosis is generally felt to be an actual protection against inflammation in the veins. So, whilst they look upon arteriosclerosis as, thickening of the veins, etc., there is some research indicating that it's actually the body protecting the veins from inflammation in there. Alzheimer's causes a great deal of inflammation of the neurons in the brain, and causes those thought processes to become lost. Pulmonary disease are very inflammatory. Lots of diseases of the airways, and of course arthritis equally is very, very much linked to that. And a lot of these things have links when you would check them out. Like Parkinson's is very linked, particularly to low vitamin C, low vitamin E levels. And a lot of this comes down to the NFR2 pathway. The NFR2 pathway in the body is a system that the body turns on when it wants to make its own antioxidants. So there are nutrients that actually activate this pathway, and of course, without good nutrients, you're not going to activate the pathway that turns on the antioxidants. And many produce many actual natural compounds will produce the things that will lower inflammation in the body and increase these things. And these phytochemicals can be used to really balance out the effects that we get from oxidative stress, from meats, from high fat content, etc. And this pathway is one of the ones that we can really highlight, both with good nutrients and with compounds as well. And not forgetting vitamin D, of course, which again has come to light a lot with COVID. And there's a very good reason for that. COVID, it has been interesting looking at COVID. COVID's a very, very inflammatory process. And I wouldn't be surprised at all when research eventually comes out if they find that the people who have had the worst effects have had the lowest vitamin D levels. And vitamin D, of course, which is a steroid hormone which controls inflammation in the body, amongst does many other things, has been found to be very helpful with COVID. This is not surprising. Vitamin D levels, when you work with somebody with cancer, that's usually one of the first places you look. I've probably had about 4 or 5 vitamin D results just in the past 2 weeks of people who've got really low vitamin D. By the doctor's assessment, it's not too far off, but actually it is well off. Our doctors in the UK generally look at vitamin D levels of about 75 millimoles as being acceptable. So if somebody comes in around about 40, they sort of go, oh yeah, it's a bit low, but it's not too far off. Actually, it's way off, way off. And if you can't control, if you haven't got the NFR2 pathway working properly and you haven't got vitamin D levels, you are potentially going to have inflammation getting out of control. And what's interesting about COVID is that actually what's happened with that a lot of the time is you get a cytokine storm whereby the immune system just goes crazy and generates a lot of inflammation, because everything's about balance in the body. We want a good immune system, but an immune system going over the top can actually cause an awful lot of problems as well. It's a very similar thing we see with immunotherapy drugs when people react to that. So that's really the immunotherapies are supposed to activate the immune system, but in some people they actually cause it too much and cause a great deal of problems. So all this comes down to really looking at and altering genetic expression. How do you get somebody to be well and somebody to have, control over the potential things in their body that's causing chronic illnesses? And it doesn't matter whether it's cancer or arthritis or any of these things. It comes down to genetic expression. We have genes that switch on, switch off, oncogenes that can generate cancer, genes that can generate inflammation, and all these genes can be sort of within our control. I think one of the big issue that we have as a planet and as a nation is where I think a lot of the issues come is we have literally evolved so fast that our bodies haven't been able to keep up with it. My parents grew up in rural Ireland. And, that's, one generation before, the lifestyle was so different to what we have now. And a lot of the time, our bodies are fighting for balance, fighting for to get that homeostasis where genetics are largely kept in balance. And, you see this with cancer, for example, the BRCA gene. Most people have heard of the BRCA gene with breast cancer. BRCA gene is not just breast cancer. BRCA gene can be prevalent with an awful lot of cancers. But people don't have the BRCA gene. The BRCA gene is we all have the BRCA gene. The BRCA gene actually protects us from cancer. It's when that gene switches on and overexpresses that it becomes what they call the BRCA gene. But it's not, it's an overexpression. And all genetic expression can be switched on, switched off. we can have a tremendous amount of control over it. And those things are actually very important. The other main one that you hear about a lot, of course, is the P53 gene. And the P53 gene is not, we focus on it a lot in cancer because it's what does program cell death. But that just doesn't affect cancer. That affects any damaged cell in the body. And so the P53 is roaming around the body, guardian of the genome, identifying that cells are damaged, there's something wrong with them. They've got, DNA issues, the programming's wrong. And the P53 will instigate the programmed cell death, apoptosis. And that's just not a cancer thing, that's with everybody in the body. And, a lot of the time the P53 can become suppressed. There's a lot of chemical disorders, over too much toxicity, all those sorts of things can be having a suppressive influence on the P53. And there's nothing about modern medicine that actually does anything about that. Nobody's fixing any of this. And some of the things that, what will upgrade P53? Curcumin will upgrade P53. Vitamin C will, B vitamins. Most natural compounds have some positive effects. So, for everything that takes place in the body, we can have a positive effect against it, equally on the mind-body side. So, and unfortunately, I think modern medicine, with its kind of here's your prescription kind of methods, have completely disengaged people from engaging in their own personal health and realizing, the power and the potential that they have within that. So, this is ultimately the aim of where we're going to go with it. But, having said all that, and, you look at lifestyle and you look at, lifestyle and, as you say, diet and obesity and things like that. And then you get the people who have really got quite healthy lifestyles who become ill. And I come across that a lot. A lot of people who develop cancer are sort of going, hang on a sec, hang on. Well, I was exercising. I was eating well, always have done. I was, doing my mindfulness and, taking care of myself, etc. What happened? And this is the difference then between, what we can do and what are the other underlying factors, which are fascinating to look at. And, then you come to, so start to look at, what the genomic implications are for each individual person. And then you come to the, back to is most of these things actually, a disease of the mitochondria? And is each individual type of disease a manifestation of that mitochondria and that mitochondrial dysfunction? That's probably a bit of an oversimplification. But that's certainly when you look at the research, that's where you find the commonalities within that. So, as the mitochondria, as you know, is the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah. Okay. So, the mitochondria are found in, mitochondria is such an important, and it's found in various concentrations in different tissues. It's such a regulator, it regulates iron concentrations, calcium, lipids, synthesizers. It provides energy for blood flow, regulates cellular damage, etc. And it's very much controlled within apoptosis. And when mitochondria are damaged and implicated, within disease, with cancer, mitochondria switch their energy production to glucose, so they switch on the GLUT receptors and start to convert energy in a different way, which enables cancer cells to really thrive in their environment. And they're also very implicated. They're very implicated with lots of other ones. Some of the common ones I found, for example, multiple sclerosis has an impaired ATP synthesis, which is the same process as cancer, and also chronic oxidative stress. So with multiple sclerosis, that ATP synthesis and energy production has changed. And so it could have been MS, it could have been cancer in that respect. Autism is renowned for having an awful lot of issues coming in the gut, inflammatory cells, and you find this with a lot of chronic diseases. Inflammatory cells actually cross the blood-brain barrier and cause inflammation in the brain. And also, autism often has abnormal glutathione pathways. Again, I'm going to look at that again in a little bit more in a minute. But yeah, a lot of issues there. With chronic fatigue, there's actually changes in the structure of the mitochondria so that they can't generate the energy. And again, the similarities is the symptoms are different, but the disease similarities are very, very similar. And with heart disease, the heart muscle has weakness from defective mitochondria. So, is everything a mitochondrial disease? And what are the, for everyone, it's a perfect storm as to what's potentially caused that. And one of the big ones, excuse me, I'll just go back. Viruses. Viruses, as I say, play a very big part in my view. Whenever we do viral checks on our cancer patients, an awful lot comes up. HPV contributes to an awful lot of viruses. It's recently been linked to prostate cancer, as well as cervical cancer, head and neck cancer. I think you will find, they don't go looking for the causes of diseases often enough, but I think you'll find it's linked to an awful lot. The Epstein-Barr virus, which is very strongly linked to chronic fatigue, very strongly linked to many chronic diseases, norovirus, cytomegalovirus. These things are often not cleared from the body, and often they're just waiting to provide that perfect storm that really we'll all be carrying the COVID virus now, and that's another. And it's a case of, again, where how much we can do to get rid of these viruses. A lot of natural compounds are very antiviral. Out of my client base, we've only had one person get coronavirus, which, considering they're immune suppressed and in a hospital a lot, is quite good. And that was just a positive test, not an issue. So, a lot of these things can actually help tremendously against viruses. But again, it's education. The public don't know that they are particularly at risk from these things. And of course, then that causes a chronic inflammation. And some of the things that we would use against inflammation, the choices are many. The diet, obviously, we're going to look at, but that's, a good natural diet is very anti-inflammatory. There's an awful lot of things that you can do to lower inflammation. I've mentioned, amongst other things, there, fasting. Fasting is going to come up a lot because fasting is proving to be one of the best ways of massively affecting gut, affecting inflammatory levels. And really, we look at supplements, we look at diet, but if someone can incorporate fasting as well, it kind of turbocharges. It very much turbocharges everything that they can do to get things back on a level playing field. Right, excuse me, but there we go. Sorry. So, looking at underlying causes, temperamental computer this evening. Obviously, one, and it's becoming so prevalent now. Look at the genetic profile for what for what's happening to somebody. There are so many now different laboratories, different services that are looking at finding out exactly what's going on for an individual person. And these are just some of the things that we look at with cancer. And of course, most practitioners will be familiar with these, and there are so many more that you can actually look at in terms of it, the healthy person. Why have they developed an issue? So, you peel the layers of the onion, have a look at the genes, and you'll generally find there is the weakness, there is the polymorphism that is going to cause them to be at risk of this. And for those of you not familiar with polymorphisms, SNPs as they're called, these are genetic defects. They are, as we know, our whole genetic makeup, our liver, our detoxification channels, the liver's quite, the gut and the liver are the two most important things in the body. Liver's the most amazing. And it will, for everything that happens in the body, obviously methylation, adding a methyl donor to a toxin is going to allow it to is going to allow it to actually detoxify that toxin. And so with that, when we have a look at this and what's actually going off in the body, so we can see here that if you have a polymorphism that's inherited down one side of the family, you will actually, that detoxification capacity is going to be reduced by about 30%. If it's both sides, it's potentially by 70%. This may not cause any problems to this person. It doesn't mean to say it's totally implicated, but it is there, potentially going to cause those issues. And we're actually, in cancer, we're actually recognizing now, if I've got someone with a triple negative breast cancer and I do a genetic test, I've got an idea what I'm going to find, and very often do. Not identical, but great tendencies. And for example, the COMT gene, as most people know, is very much linked with mental health. It's with balancing all the different chemicals in the body, the dopamine, the endorphins, and anyone who's got issues with COMT methylation, they're going to be very slow methylators. They're going to be slow at clearing things from the body. They're going to be very sensitive to different chemicals, particularly mentally. And you can link a lot of mental health issues to exactly what's happening in the liver detoxification capacities. And this shows up time and again. The acetylation in terms of dealing with all the long-term toxic overloads that we get. The glutathione so important because that is all the water-soluble environmental toxins that come in that we've been talking about. And so these give us an idea of such valuable information in terms of where the person is going to be vulnerable, where they're going to need support, what things can they deal with, and what things can they not deal with. So I think this whole side has moved so far ahead of general standard medicine in terms of how to help someone. It's making a massive difference. And the phase 1 detoxification of the liver, in terms of its ability to break down hormones of the CYP1B1 pathway, these CYP216, 219 that detoxifies so many drugs. And so often when people have reactions to drugs, whether it's cytotoxic drugs or general drugs given by any doctor, the issues there, if they're having side effects from them or the drugs aren't working, it's often that they just can't, they're not breaking them down. The liver is just not breaking them down or not breaking them down fast enough. So either there's going to be an issue whereby certain things will actually inhibit the drug absorption, or certain things will actually boost the drug absorption. But again, this allows us to look and to be able to target what kind of detoxification support someone needs. And with the liver, that may be quite pertinent and quite certainly quite gentle support often needed to help. There's no point in detoxifying a blocked pipe, as I often say. So, and then that brings us on to a lot of the things that have been done. Massive massive development now in nutrigenomic testing, which is I'm agog at how fast all this is gathering its come apace. And so based on DNA and methylation, you can work out exactly what diet is going to suit somebody best and what their body's going to be able to deal with it, based on their unique set of chromosomes. And from what I've seen, that's very, very good advice indeed. I know from looking at the work a lot of people are doing on their on comp genes, etc. That is making a big difference in terms of how they're able to manage all the advice they're given. So a lot of this information is very good for us as practitioners to be able to narrow down where to focus and where to place the actual focus. Because I know, particularly in the cancer world, one of the big issues for people diagnosed with cancer is obviously information overload. Anybody diagnosed with cancer suddenly has advice coming out from left, right, and centre on what's the best thing to do, etc. So the more that we can really target that, the better. And coming down to then, mitochondrial support, which is so important. So, lots of things that will help with that acetylcarnitine, B vitamins. Some of these things, if you've got a comp gene, you need to be careful with. Lipoic acid, obviously. Exercise, calorific restriction, all these things will have a very, very good impact. And of course, because poor methylation leads to toxicity in the body, essentially, people might have a lifetime of insidious toxicity. And if the liver's unable to methylate, then you're going to get toxic stress, and then it's just a matter of what really happens in those terms, in terms of how that manifests itself in the body as a chronic illness. And as we know, methylation processes is essential for the chemical reactions in our body. We've got hundreds of different essential chemical reactions that are taking place all the time. And that is, methylation supports, the neurotransmitter synthesis, proteins from our genes, protects the body's telomerase, which is so important if we want to live long and stay healthy and look a bit younger. The telomerase, which is the strands at the end of the DNA, they unravel as they become damaged, and the faster they unravel and damage, the quicker we age. And so anything, that supports them, we're very grateful for. Folate metabolization is so important for cardiovascular health, and of course, hormone regulation. And, reduce inflammation and restore the level of metabolism right around the body. So, methylation support, and there's lots of many things that we can do with that, are very, very important to health. The liver, I find the most incredible thing. I actually had a client, who it's about 18 months ago now, he had a liver metastasis, and he had 80% of his liver removed surgically for liver metastases. And his liver is now bigger than it was before the operation. It has grown back like a marrow. I told him he ought to start growing vegetables. They're going to be award winners. But it just shows you the regenerative capacity of the liver. And this is why, if a doctor does a liver function test, if you're looking at alkaline phosphatase and amylase and different things, you very rarely see, this is where you've got to look at the genetics, you very, very rarely see problems come up in liver function tests. The liver's got to be in a lot of trouble before it will show a change in liver enzymes. So, that's if a person goes to a GP and has a well person test, they'll get a blood sugar. That's good to know. They'll get a vitamin D level, hopefully, and they'll get a liver function test. They've probably told the liver function test is perfectly fine, but that tells you nothing about the liver. You've got to look much deeper at that. And again, liver support, there's lots of things that will help our liver to detoxify, depending on the level we need. We use liver packs, infrared saunas. If someone's liver's in trouble, encourage them to do things to take toxicity away from the liver. And then the other important thing, the gut, of course. Again, we never stop learning about the gut and the issues it causes. So, between, trillions of microorganisms, there's more bacteria in the gut than there are cells in the human body. And it's absolutely vital. And when somebody has had antibiotic use, as an awful lot of people have, etc., the effect on that is not just an effect on the microbiome. It's a real effect on lowering the different vitamins, minerals, etc. Melatonin, which of course we need to help, serotonin to help with our mood and our brain. So butyrate is so important. All these things are massively affected by antibiotics. I haven't gone into, but also the effect of pharmaceuticals on the gut microbiome. Absolutely, chemotherapy is devastating, of course. I think most people realise that. So why don't doctors repair it? But moving into the new sphere now of immunotherapies, you've seen nothing like the gut problems, honestly. If chemotherapy caused problems, immunotherapy is taking it to the next level. But then you look at the standard things like aspirin, proton pump inhibitors. There are very few pharmaceutical drugs that aren't having an effect on the gut. And that long-term effect is hidden, because anything like that is going to cause an awful lot of problems. And often on testing, the things that I find that come up, the ones that these are just the kind of the top 5 things that I see on gut testing most with people with cancer that cause problems. Parasites come up, but not so often, or quite honestly, they might be too microscopic for the labs to pick up. That doesn't mean so they're not there. E. coli, very, very much so. And E. coli is very inflammatory in the body. Klebsiella is a nasty pathogenic gut bacteria. And if that gets a hold, Klebsiella is very unaffected by antibiotics. It needs to be got rid of by natural means. And there's some good things, mainly herbal things. Herbal things are much better at sorting out gut bacteria than antibiotics ever are. H. pylori, the bacteria that causes H. pylori causes problem stomach ulcers. But if it's not manifesting as a stomach ulcer, it will actually cause an awful lot of inflammation throughout the gut. Candida, very common with an awful lot of dietary aspects. Drugs, proton pump inhibitors will encourage candida. Most drugs will. And then once candida is coating the gut, you've got malabsorption. So you're not going to get an awful lot of all those, even with the good nutrients, are not going in. So this is why the healthy people can get problems, because they don't realize that all the good stuff they're going in is either not going in properly or it's not working at all. And of course, IgA, which is the body's immune system in the gut. If IgA is suppressed, you're not likely to get a proper immune reaction in the gut when a pathogenic bacteria enters the gut, as it's bound to. And if you've got an overactive IgA, that means there's something really in there that the IgA is absolutely reacting to. And good gut health is vitally important. So probiotics are very helpful, but I personally find that you need to look at what the actual of these issues are, and deal with them as well as doing probiotics. Sometimes probiotics are not the right things to get to the bottom of this. And, you might, for example, the IgA promotion, you might need something like colostrum. Probiotics are important, but we need to look at exactly what it is that you're targeting and in those. And, the effect of the gut on the brain is phenomenal in terms of the mood. And, as I say, again, a lot of mental health issues are caused by aberrant gut bacteria. And the dreadful year we've just had with COVID and the amount of pressure on everybody, it's leaving everybody, I think, vulnerable to a lot of issues. So potential things for gut repair. Again, fasting becomes so high, so cheap, and so easy. Fasting before chemotherapy massively reduces side effects. Then you've got, your anti-inflammatory slippery elm fish oils, ginger, prebiotics, probiotics, etc. Berberine, chlorella. All these things are potentially going to have excellent benefits on the gut. And then our positive dietary elements, of course, so important. If the gut's involved, things like bone broth, nuts, vegetables, fermented foods in particular. Again, the genomic testing, if the person's able to do that, will give some idea of again, focus where we can look down on this. And the immune system, immune modulators. Our immune system is such an important thing for us. We know we have the innate and the adaptive immune system in our body, and we all know about the adaptive one over the last year, trying to adapt to COVID. Our innate immune system, we're kind of born with, we inherit. That's what we come with, and that's what's come with us genetically, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing depending on polymorphisms. Our adaptive acquired immunity is the adaptation to whatever we pick up along the way, and this is in a state of flux all the time. So making sure that the immune system is able to react properly. And so many things that can help with that, obviously good diet, vegetables in particular, BioBran MGN3, which is that made from breaking down rice bran with enzymes from shiitake mushroom is my go-to for a really suppressed immune system if I want to get things done really quickly. AHCC also extremely good. So making sure that the immune system is able to react. There are so many processes that go off in the body with chronic illnesses that will suppress our immune system. And of course, mental, psychological, lack of exercise, everything's a complete balancing act. And I also, I forgot to mention on viruses, interestingly, some of the stronger antiviral processes that we have, medicinal mushrooms, very antiviral, curcumin, very natural antiviral. This is why people who are supplementing well, are not getting the COVID. And interestingly, I mentioned HPV, very prevalent with many cancers, many chronic illnesses. Actually, BioBran's got good evidence for getting rid of HPV, actually healing cervical cancer lesions. Studies on that. Studies are available, so really strong evidence. It does make you sit here and think, how on earth does the medical world not take notice of all this? This has been my thing for, 20 or 25 odd years now doing this. All this evidence is there. You put the bits of the jigsaw together. Come on, why is this? Why is the medical world just sticking on the plasters and not looking underneath? It's exhausting even thinking about them. Oxygenate the body. When you oxygenate the body, it lowers inflammation. It reduces oxidative stress. The more, to whatever level somebody cannot access, can do that. And, whether it's exercise, whether it's high intensity exercise, whether it's Qigong, deep breathing, very popular, I encourage a lot, is exercise with an oxygen concentrator and use an exercise machine. Hyperbaric oxygen, we use it an awful lot with cancer. It's fantastic for reducing inflammation, oxidative stress. It's fantastic for a lot of chronic disease states. People with multiple sclerosis use it a great deal. People who've had strokes, Parkinson's. Most people who've got a chronic illness will benefit from an input of oxygen. And if they're in a disease state or physical state where they can't actually benefit from, if they can't actually do exercise themselves, there are ways that, we can help them get in, even if it's using an oxygen concentrator without exercising. Any increase in oxygen is going to have benefit, and the more the better. And, a lot of these things, even hyperbaric, is available very regularly without too much expense. Antioxidants, again, from food, from different food sources in particular. Again, we've got to make sure that they're absorbing. Poor people who kind of become ill with fantastic diets, it's a devil, really. But there's brilliant, so much research on it. This is a pooled analysis of 8 studies on all the published data on plasma, serum carotenoids, and breast cancer. And the conclusion was that people with higher circulating levels of all these different flavonoids may be at reduced risk of breast cancer. There's no may about it. They absolutely will be. Absolutely will be, just as they've linked greater dairy intake with breast cancer, prostate cancers, etc. And you can throw in greater intake of tap water with that as well, for me, as far as I'm concerned. So, everything about these diets, the fast foods, the increase in that has, increased ill health right across the Western world, and unfortunately, the Eastern world follows us. They'll soon be catching up. There are reasons why you see such disparities in chronic illnesses, with right across the world with certain types of diets. And once you begin to link in the different pollutions, the different diets, etc., it becomes pretty clear what's happening there. So, for me, a good diet obviously is to minimize glucose and carbs. Preaching to the converted, I know. Minimize processed foods, maximum nutrition, but maximum absorption as well. And if someone's really got a blood sugar problem, ketogenic diet, but with a more vegetable link to it. It's what they call ketogenic adaptability. Ketogenic, which is used a great deal with cancers, very good with brain tumors, and any of the different cancers consume different things. Some consume fats more than glucose. So with the fats, if it's a fat-consuming cancer, then obviously that's not one for ketogenic. But if someone's got a real insulin resistance blood sugar problem, ketogenic diet will have a massive effect very, very quickly, which is enormously useful. Obviously, juicing and smoothies on a daily diet, get as much in there naturally as possible, and the big focus on vegetables and different things. It's fantastic to see that becoming so popular recently. If somebody isn't able to manage the intake or has poor absorption, they can have a supplement like Vibe, which will give them an awful lot of things. If somebody's extremely, we'll deal with people who are extremely unwell, who perhaps have got malnutrition problems. I deal a lot with cachexia, where people have problems just eating, or become massively depleted and getting a lot of things into them very quickly. And that's a good rundown, actually, of the kind of different blend of vitamins and minerals that somebody should be looking at on a daily basis. And then, the important element in that's missing in healing, I think, and this goes right across the medical way. I just think the way we've developed medicine is so bad. They take out each individual bit and try and apply a sticking plaster to it, and everything about, certainly, obviously my thing's cancer, but everything about a lot of medicine is really disengaging the person. It's trying to find the magic bullet, the answer. And with most things, the answer's there. Dr. Naisha Winters, I did a thing with the other week, and she's brilliant. And her take is very much that all these diseases are the same. They absolutely are. And it's mitochondria, it's hormones, it's toxicity, it's these things. And the fixes aren't that difficult. And absolutely these things are just as important. And I find in my field, in the cancer field, sometimes with the development of so many different potentials there's people to do, people, through fear and through, desperation to make an impact, sometimes forget about the simpler stuff. And actually it's the simpler stuff that makes the bigger stuff work. So looking at things like sleep, stress, emotional, spiritual impact, energy healing, having a sense of purpose. I think a lot of what we try and do with our clients is to not just to help them, in many different aspects, but to give them that sense of purpose, because, ill health will take that away from you. And, stress is a very, very major player. If we don't sort of focus on that as much as we do on the biochemical, on the nutrition, then we're absolutely missing a trick. Looking at this last year, and either for some impact, the effect of the last year's unfortunate, and but look at what's happened to some people, and it's just dreadful. That sense of disempowerment must be enormous. And that then, affects sleeping, affects cortisol levels. Everything goes wrong when you are stressed and you don't sleep. And it doesn't matter what's going on the nutrition side. So it comes down to the circadian rhythms. You've got this transactional feedback loop, which is cortisol, as we know, our stress hormone. Good thing. I won't bother getting out of bed in the morning if it wasn't cortisol. And some days think, oh, wish I didn't have the cortisol. But it reduces insulin through the HPA axis and the glucocorticoids, and melatonin, very, very important. For anyone who's got malabsorption problems, is there any pancreatic insufficiency? That inhibits the insulin production by the pancreas. So, that enables us to get to sleep and get off. And, all that chemical imbalance that takes place at night between growth hormones, insulin, and the liver detoxification, the gut resets at night, it's all very important. So melatonin's a very, very good thing to know about in terms of the person's levels. Are they getting to sleep? Are they waking up in the night? Are they not getting off and then they're kind of drifting off late? All the things, a good bedtime pattern, Epsom, infrared sauna, Epsom salts bath, relax, very, very dark room. All these things make a good impact. My husband would say me talking about my latest golf game would get anybody off with no problem at all. I disagree. Actually, my latest one was dreadful. Perhaps the one before that. So essentially, yeah, we are absolutely aiming to, I think we're moving, there's so many good things that we can do. There's probably too many different areas to look at. That's why I'm particularly pleased. I think the whole area of functional testing now points us in the right, helps us to point the person in the right direction to work out priorities and work out what they need to do. And, but the important things really are to, identify those underlying things, help us, information is knowledge, help people, find out exactly what's happening to them, reduce the toxins, help them find out, learn what heals them, step-by-step improving that, address the methylation, detoxification issues, and essentially, you know, that's what we're doing with people, and essentially enabling them to become their own healers. That's where the knowledge and the empowerment will take people. And yes, so that's you know, I think between chronic illnesses, you know, you know, I know I specialize in cancer, but I know a lot of practitioners will be seeing a lot of people with lots and lots of different issues, lots of different types of illnesses. And that, you know, that's because I'm sure, you know, you find that, you know, they are all pretty much all the same thing. And we you know, I think I mentioned at the beginning, you couldn't see my slide, but we've recently launched the Peat Institute, which is very, very grand sounding thing, which I'm looking forward to celebrating with a haircut. And this has always been my thing since I came to work in this area and seen everything develop. One of the things that I find annoying and a bit distressing is the fact that practitioners are largely taught not to hurt, you know, don't support people with cancer. You might get it wrong and you might cause problems, and, you know, essentially you might get in the way of the treatments, things like this. And also the fact that the medical profession does not have the regard and respect for the practitioners that it should do. You know, when you look at, you know, the nutritional training that's done, the naturopaths, the amount of studying people's done, the amount of enthusiasm, you know, the enthusiasm and you know, education that goes on, you know, for it all to be ignored by the medical profession is a major bugbear for me. Because I think if, you know, when I was an oncology nurse, if I knew half of what most practitioners know now, I would have been able to help my patients no end, absolutely. And we, you know, the expertise, the research is there to enable us to work with every facet of working with somebody with cancer, with great care, with great safety, with being able to ensure that we don't cause any interactions, any side effects, and actually enhance the effectiveness of the treatment. And so, you know, from that, something I meant to do for a very long time, is we've now starting our practitioner training to help people, to help practitioners, support them in working with people with cancer. So to give the knowledge, to give the support, the discussions, all those different elements, because people with the need for this support is enormous. I can't begin to tell you. As I think as integrative medicine has grown, unfortunately, the practitioners haven't come into dealing with cancer so much because they keep, you know, they're kind of warned off it to an extent. And now the demand, the need is fantastic. It really, really is. And, you know, so all these people are there needing help, and, you know, there aren't enough people there to do it. So we want to help practitioners really get into and you know, it is incredibly satisfying helping someone go from the devastation of diagnosis to growing, to dealing with everything that the medical profession throws at them, including the psychological and the negativity, much to talk about there, and to go on and blossom and become their own healers. So, you know, and I think, I don't think, I say there isn't an oncology nurse out there who wouldn't actually be quite jealous of what could be achieved. So that's what we're going to do. And, you know, but as I say, all that knowledge can be transported across different disease sites without any problem at all. And that's what I've got to say at the moment. So I think we'll go to questions if we have any.
Yeah, there's a few in the chat, Patricia. Can you see them?
No, I've not looked at the chat. Sorry, I was a bit busy.
Yes, sorry.
Right. Okay, bear with me while I find the chat.
There's one that's asking what solution would you put forward for a water filter systems that wouldn't upset the whole house, that would remove plastic and nanoparticles?
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, interestingly, when I first got into this area, the reverse osmosis was the most effective way of doing it. Gosh, you know, I remember they were massively expensive then. They were about £800, something like that. It was incredible. But, you know, there's always negatives to everything. Reverse osmosis obviously takes everything out, but it does leave the water kind of dead as well. So you have to remineralize. You have to make sure there are good things in water. I'm sorry, I've given water a bit of a bad vibe tonight, but there are some good things in there as well. And so the reverse osmosis does, but it takes up all under your cupboard, and it's very heavy on energy as well, and quite expensive to run. So lots of, you know, there are now, and I'm struggling to get one to come to mind. There are now quite a few, you know, different kinds of filters that will actually filter and remineralize. The important thing for me, and always to check the manufacturers, is that it takes hormones out, because there's quite a lot of filters that will filter but don't necessarily remove toxic hormones, and it's important to get those out. Of course, you know, you can do the whole house. You can certainly do, you know, sort of do the whole house filtration. That's a very expensive thing to do, but you know, I think in an ideal world, yeah, that would be amazing, because I know. We haven't, and I know we can actually tell where we live what days they actually put the chemicals into the water, because they do it like twice a week rather in 2 big batches, rather than, so you can smell the chlorine. So yeah, you know, so if you want to drop me an email, I'll come back with some of the water filter product, you know, the ones that we've checked out and are good, that I can't remember the name of immediately.
Someone else has asked, can one take supplements while on chemo, i.e. in between chemo session days? I suppose that extends to Biobran as well. Is that, would you recommend to take that through the chemotherapy or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we work on, okay, now different, and this is a bit complicated. This is all the stuff we're going to cover on the course. Different chemotherapies, and there are many of them. There's over 50 different chemotherapy drugs. They all detoxify in the liver down certain pathways, and also then you get certain supplements that are either inhibitors or inducers of those pathways. So they might inhibit, they might induce a stronger reaction, in which case they cause the drug to work better, but they might cause side effects, or they might block it. Now, in reality, that doesn't happen to a great degree, but because of that, chemo departments, they vary. You don't get a uniform response off anybody, but chemo departments often will sort of say, oh, don't take anything, it'll interfere. End of. That's all I've got to say on the subject. And actually, you know, when you actually, during the, what you call, Jay McClelland sort of coined the kill phase, is when chemo is active, you don't want any antioxidants there because they might interfere. And I tend to work on the basis, don't have anything in there that's going to interfere. So what we do, you work on the half-life. So each chemotherapy drug breaks down to its half-life. That means it's half as effective as it was. You know, it's been detoxified by, usually by the liver, can be by other, you know, other means, and it's reached its half strength where it's not actually cytotoxic, it's just sort of hanging around being toxic. And it's very quick. You know, with a lot of chemotherapies, you have a 3-week cycle, but the actual drug is only active for, it can be 12 hours, it can be 18 hours. You know, that's, you know, the average. So you actually, what you've got is a massive hit of drug, and then the half-life, and then you've got the gap in between to allow the immune system to recover. So, you know, if you wanted to get rid of cancer, you'd just give people loads of chemo every day. Unfortunately, you'll kill the person. So that's what happens. So what we do is prepare. So, you know, you massively prepare the cells to receive the chemotherapy, because chemo, I've gone right off on this subject now, sorry, but chemo is kind of thrown in, let's see if it works. And there's all sorts of things that will generate resistance, such as inflammation. So, you know, we get people to fast, anti-inflammatory, massively, you know, reduce glucose, and sort of prepare for the chemo. Then during the chemo, while it's given and while it's active, we do what we call the kill phase. So you do things that will help the chemo without interfering, perhaps like high dose vitamin C, liposomally, something like that, or IV, etc., for the period until it's gone down to its half-life. And then the rest of the time, then it's recovery, it's liver support, it's antioxidants, it's detoxify. So, we have a phase where we just allow that to happen. And, hopefully that will stop, because some people will have chemotherapy and, those cells are just resistant. It won't work at all, and that's terrible. So we're trying and, we can, you can enhance that effect, best example of this I've seen is in Istanbul, chemotherapy clinic, where they've looked at this problem of resistance and really, really, really gone for the metabolic interventions as well. And, they can get resistant cancer into remission, really, really well. I'm not saying that amount of cytotoxicity is always a good idea, but, it shows that you can actually influence things very, very positively. So the short answer is yes, and that was the long answer. Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I think we've got time maybe for one more. How much immunity can you get from a healthy diet, and where does a supplement, say like BioBrand, come into play?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that. You're a bit quiet.
Sorry. So how much immunity can you get from a healthy diet, and where does the supplement, say like BioBrand, come into play?
Well, that's a good question generally, and excuse me if I'm a bit too immersed in the cancer world to look at that, because it's a bit easier when someone's on cancer, because when they're going to be immune suppressed by the chemotherapy. Yeah. And also we do tests on natural killer cells, T cells, etc., to see exactly how the immune system is responding. So, I find it quite easy with that. And of course, if someone's on chemotherapy treatments, then we are, you're looking at the white cell count, you're looking at the neutrophils, eosinophils, and outside of cancer with other chronic diseases, I would say the ideal thing would be to look, not so much at natural killer cells, but to get a normal blood count done, can be done privately, or if you've got a good GP or whatever. Look at the white cells, look at the balance between neutrophils, lymphocytes, etc. And that will give you quite a good indication of how the immune system is responding. Plus, how the person is generally as well. So I think it's actually relatively easy. But you've got to work out, and this will we're going to cover in quite a lot of depth as well. You got to look at the percentages of the different white cell counts to work out, is that going on? A normal blood count by a doctor, we'll look at things like C-reactive protein. You'll get inflammatory markers in there. You'll get an idea. I said the liver, unless it's in real trouble, you can't tell. But a lot of the other markers, you can tell. A fasting blood sugar or an IgA level over, which shows you, a month's glucose control, will give you a good idea of their glucose intolerance. So, always try and, sort of call. I know it's expensive for people to keep being tested for different things, but I find quite a lot of metabolics you can pick up about the immune system just from a standard blood test by a GP.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sure I speak for everyone, Patricia. It was absolutely fascinating. Thank you.